This is my page about Carl Borges. 4th of July I went round to my friend Sarah's house. Peter's a neighbour of my friend Sarah. I've yet to meet him, but I've seen some of his work on her walls, and I'm booked on a course led by him at Gainsborough's house in Sudbury early in 2015. Peter does very experimental surfaces, and he's doing one on how to use different sort of chemicals and household bits and pieces to affect the surface of your prints. Sarah and her husband have just bought 2 more of Carl's prints, one of Coombs Church to Badley Church, which is very local to us. It's a black and white picture map, a lino cut, and lots of interesting things to see, little details, animals, walkers, etc., hidden among the patterns of the fields and the woods. The other one they've bought is a triptych of Highgate Cemetery, and it's a collagraph in red and green, and it's really beautiful detailed work, very softly printed. And the explanation is apparently that all the colours were printed at once but rolled on separately, and each one pushed the previous ink in. And Sarah had also got the original plates of these on loan, and they were really strong but very light and delicate. They were absolutely stunning. I couldn't identify what all the materials in the plates was made of, but I could see different types of surfaces, and I've drawn them in my sketchbook. But it changed my perception of how detailed and controlled a collagraph could be, and what I want to do is to practice more and to try this technique of inking several colours at once. And I've now looked at Peter's Carl. Sarah calls him Peter, but he trades under Carl Borges. I've now looked at his work online, and the triptych of Highgate Cemetery is visible. So I'll put a link into that. I have got a photograph of these plates, but I'm very wary of putting his work on, making it available online without his permission. I don't think that's very fair. It's the 10th of July, Thursday. It's been my art day, and I've been quite busy again today. This follows on from the Carl Borges prints comment. It's making my plate for the rational print and starting to look at building up textures and layers. So these are the materials that I'd gathered. I've got a bit of a plastic shirt box packaging, which is quite stiff plastic, and I'm using that as my plate, and building up with other materials, masking tape, some fruit packaging, a bit of plasticized paper and some sandpaper. And I wanted to see how much detail I could get in, and how delicate I could be with it. So those are my materials, and this is the plate that I've built up. Is it going to come into focus? I hope. So, and I've done it all with PVA glue by cutting and sticking these materials onto the plastic plate, and at the state I'm at now, I'm waiting for it to dry thoroughly so that I can have a go and print it. And the effect that I'm looking for is the one that that Carl Borges had, where he put 2 different coloured inks over his plate, and the principle was that the second colour forced the first colour down and into the corners, and I'm trying to see if I can repeat the same effect. Yep, it's Saturday the 12th of July, and I checked my plan of work on Thursday night, and I'm beginning to fall behind, so I need to ramp up the action and make the most of every opportunity that I've got. So this morning I've grabbed an hour. Yesterday I spent travelling down to Kent to go and collect my mum, so I've got both mums with me for the week, and I need to work out how to use that to my advantage and help but they entertain each other a bit while I escape upstairs. But I've grabbed an hour before breakfast this morning to ink up my plate for the rational abstract, and this is the one that I did based on household items and using Degas' absinthe picture. And the effect I'm trying to recreate is the one that I saw or have seen the results of by Carl Borges, that he gets two ink colours onto the plate and inks up the plate with both colours, and they both come through at the same time. So this was my first attempt. I did one in blue. It slipped slightly as I put it on the paper, but that was just to work out the effect of all the different materials I'd used and what's come out. I like this plastic backing of the shirt box. It's taken the ink very well and given it a nice sort of solid background. The masking tape works really well. The orange knitting doesn't particularly. It's okay. It's an effect in places, but it's really hard that it doesn't hold the ink well, and because it's obviously quite thick, it's difficult to get any ink in the gaps in between. So I've definitely got spaces. The sandpaper areas haven't worked particularly well, and again that's much because it's much thicker paper. I've got big broader white lines around than I really wanted. So that was my blue. Then I tried inking it up with yellow, but being me, I didn't go downstairs and wash my roller. I just ran into the yellow, so of course I muddled it up too much and I got green. So the effect hasn't been as dramatic as I wanted, but there are places you can see where the original colour's been pushed into the corners, but that's my fault rather than necessarily the technique that's wrong. So then I had to go back to the drawing board on that one. More haste, less speed, as they say. What I did discover with the very solid, irresistible materials that I've got is that when I've got the roller inked up and I roll over the design once, it leaves an imprint in the ink on the roller. And when I noticed that, I then just rolled the roller across a page. And I managed to print off what the marks that had been left on the roller, so they're quite interesting by themselves and something to bear in mind for the future. So because I was having trouble with getting enough ink into the spaces on the plate, I then started inking up by hand, and rather than using a roller, just applied the ink directly with a piece of scrim, and then so I put the blue on first and then polished up the plate, but you can begin to see areas where the plate is breaking up. I've lost a plastic circle off the top there, and the netting has begun to lift, and also where I've got really smooth areas and I'd put PVA glue over it to seal it, the PVA is beginning to flake off in places as well, so it's not a terribly resistant plate. It's going to get damaged quite quickly, but that worked a lot better so I put the blue ink on first, say with scrim, and then polished it off with newspaper and polished it back to the edges, and then I went over it. I inked up the roller with yellow properly this time, and just rolled it across the plate once to get yellow onto it. And once again I noticed that by doing that I got an impression of the print on my roller, so I again took a fresh sheet of paper and just cleaned the roller and rolled it across once to print off the marks that were left on the roller. And again, really interesting effect by itself. Then I did the print proper, and it came out like this, which I was much more pleased with. It's integrated the blue and the yellows, so I've got areas of yellow, areas of blue, areas where the ink is mixed, and I was much more careful over the printing it. It's hand printed from the back, and I went over this several times with a soft pad, which is here. I've made myself one of these, which I've had for quite a long time, so I could just push down hard from the back to get an impression there. I also used my trusty pecan nut, which again just going over every area, just printing up, and I managed to get the edges really smooth on that one. And I also worked on embossing it, so I'd had a practice with that on the last print, which is here. I'd just done a little area where I tried to use different tools and go through it on the back to see what I could get with embossing. So I worked on that much more carefully with this print, and I don't know whether it shows there, but I've managed to get embossed ridges here and around these areas, and then I've been around the whole of the outside of the plate. So I've managed to get quite a nice clean embossed effect there, so that the print sits back on the paper. Also the bottle and the glass embossed there, and I also worked on an area of netting, just rubbing through from the back to see what I could get. So I think I've now got enough different effects from that, and I've learnt what the materials do. It's changed my thinking on how deep and the collaged materials need to be. These areas with the masking tape, although it's very thin, actually work really nicely together. And areas where you've got hard plastic actually are quite difficult to handle, and very difficult to get the ink where you want it. But then thin plastic here has worked nicely, and I've been able to sort of gauge the effect of the embossing you get from different materials. So I think I've got enough information to work with here from this practice to be able to do my rational print, and I've decided to work on the Degas woman in the tub because it's a really simple shape, and I think it's now my task this week is to work out how to print it very, very well.